think it's definitely going to go down in the history books for the way we fought back. And, if we end the season like we want to, I think we should definitely have a 30-30 for sure. Because, at first we weren't supposed to, have the opportunity to play, but we just fought so hard to get it back, and we're just all so excited for the opportunity. So I definitely think this is going to go down in the history books. So we're just hoping that, we have a great season and get to be out there on the field.
History will remember the fight the players made to get the opportunity to play. It is College Football Live. I'm Jason Fitz, sitting with Desmond Howard, Jim Moore, and we have got a stacked show. A lot to get into, gentlemen, and it starts, obviously, with the conversation about playing, and that's something Big Ten players are particularly excited about. I'm not sure anyone is more excited, frankly, than Ohio State's Shaun Wade. Remember, initially, he had opted out of the season. At this point, he was going to prepare for the NFL draft, but he also made it clear that he would reconsider if the Big Ten made an announcement to play sooner. They did, he did, and now Shaun Wade officially coming back. This is what he had to say this morning when he was on Keyshawn, Jay Will, and Zubin on ESPN Radio.
In January, I came back to OSU to graduate, to get my degree, to win a national championship, and just really compete and show people I can play outside corner. And since they decided to cancel the season, it was like, dang, I was trying to just be as patient as I can, and I kind of ran out of patience for a little bit. But I didn't sign nothing. I told coaches I wouldn't sign nothing for a little while, so I didn't do that, and I was still being patient. But when they decided to reopen the season, it was just a blessing from God, and just when they did that, I knew back in my heart I was ready to come back to OSU and just play and be with my boys, and I can't wait.
Now, the decision not to sign any paperwork we'll get into in a minute. It's significant. But, Des, give me your impression on Shaun Wade and your thoughts on his decision to opt back into the season.
Well, guys, let's just keep it 100, okay? These guys, especially a talented player like Shaun Wade, when you have his skill set, his eye is on the prize, and that prize is the shield, the NFL. He wants to be drafted. And if you're going back and forth as far as is the conference going to play, maybe they will, maybe they won't. Now, I understand how that young man said he ran out of patience. He wanted to start to train for the NFL draft. And, that's what led him to make that decision. But then, obviously, when they did a about face and they turned 180 and they decided, the Big Ten decided to have a season, then he understood, okay, this is still an opportunity for me to get some more good film out there for these NFL scouts, for these GMs, so they can see who I am, what I can do. We may have a chance with Justin Fields at the quarterback position to win a national championship. So I understood his decision to opt back in. But I watched that same interview, guys, and at the end, Keyshawn asked him, if you guys start the season and you lose a couple of games, are you going to opt back out? And you know what he said, Coach? He said, I don't know, man. That is not a good look, Coach.
That's not the answer Ryan Day and his teammates want to hear. But I applaud him for opting back in. And Desmond, I agree with you 100% on everything you said. I like to watch great players play. I like to watch great competitors compete. And I think this young man is both of those things. We've seen him work so well from the slot, and now he's going to get a chance to play on the outside. He's got great ball skills, great ball awareness. He'll tackle. He can play man. He can play zone. And as you said, this gives him a chance to put more tape out there. It also gives him a chance to go on the field and hone his skills in a competitive environment. And that's not something that you can replicate on your own when you're just training for the draft. You need to get out there and you need to be under the lights and you need to compete against other great players. And so this is just going to make him a great player. And one more point. I think that NFL decision makers will like the fact that he opted back in and he decided to go back and help his team and compete because it shows a commitment, and they like that commitment at the NFL level.
Well, it shows a commitment, Coach, for sure, but let's be real. To Des's point, it's a lot easier to make that commitment when you know you're fighting for a national championship. That's what this is about. If this was a bad football team, Coach, I'm not sure we're having the same conversation.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with you, but we're talking about a really good football team. And we're talking about a really good football player. And so that was the decision that was made, and that was the reason it was made. And I think, Keyshawn probably caught him off guard a little bit, which Keyshawn can do, because he's got some great unorthodox questions. But I'd be very surprised if this young man, well, first of all, things aren't going to go south for Ohio State. Let's just be honest right here. And if they did, I don't think this young man would opt out. I don't think that's his character. I think, as Des said, and as he said in his interview, he was getting impatient. We were all getting impatient with the Big Ten. We were all getting impatient with the Pac-12. We want to see football, and these football players want to play the game on Saturdays.
Well, and he's not the only player that's making...
I agree with Coach.
Go ahead, Des.
Go ahead. No, I agree with Coach, but I mean, listen, you can't let that question blindside you. I mean, that's not a complicated question to answer.
Still learning. He's still learning his media skills.
If you guys start losing games early, are you going to back out? I don't care how you feel. The answer is no. I'm in it. You know what I'm saying?
And I have a sneaking suspicion when he's asked again, the answer will be no. He's going to figure this one out. Speaking of no, we'll see if the NCAA says no to another player that's trying to figure this out, is Rashad Bateman, obviously the reigning Big Ten receiver of the year. Remember, he initially decided to opt out. That was all the way back on August 4th. He's trying to reverse that decision as well, but his path is complicated because he signed with an agent which technically terminates his remaining eligibility. He'll now likely require a waiver throughout the NCAA reinstatement process. So we'll see what that means. In the meantime, let's get you a COVID update. Some breaking news. Houston and Baylor has been postponed due to Baylor not meeting the Big 12 Conference COVID-19 game cancellation thresholds. The team will monitor dates for future scheduling opportunities. Both teams have now had multiple games postponed this season, something we're all getting used to, and they're not the only ones dealing with it. Next up, FAU, Florida Atlantic announced it has postponed its game with Georgia Southern on Saturday following COVID-19 test results from Thursday. The two schools are working to find a date later this season to reschedule. Again, we're going to have a whole list of these every single weekend to go through, and this is not the end of the list for this. We'll move next to North Carolina. On Thursday, North Carolina announced its game with Charlotte was canceled. Charlotte pulled out of the game due to players needing to quarantine from contact tracing. Several members of the team's offensive line have been exposed. So one positive test results in a cancellation here. So we'll see what that means moving forward. Also on Thursday, the ACC announced Virginia at Virginia Tech. This one's positive, has been rescheduled December 12th. The game was originally scheduled for tomorrow, but was postponed due to a number of Virginia Tech players needing to quarantine. And speaking of a little bit of positive news, MAC presidents are going to meet on Saturday to review a possible fall football season. The MAC was the first FBS conference to postpone its season this summer when it did so on August 8th. The most likely scenario would be 6 or 8 games for their season. Hopefully we can get an answer there soon. And speaking of waiting for an answer, the Pac-12 continues to discuss return to play options. Earlier this week, USC and UCLA athletic directors got approval needed from LA County to begin practicing once the Pac-12 signs off on a return to play. So guys, let's have a Pac-12 conversation. Remember, Pac-12 Commissioner Larry Scott said not only are they not expecting a vote today, he's not going to push for a vote to happen. So let's take a look at the What's Your Beef, brought to you by Old Trapper. Des, any beef with the way the Pac-12 is handling this?
Well, I don't really have a big beef with them as far as their initial decision, because they made the same decision that the Big Ten made as far as postponing or canceling whatever the initial decision was. Now to go revisit that decision, I think is the right thing to do. It just doesn't seem like they're in any hurry to try to rush to try to make this decision, though. Like they're taking their time, they're being very cautious, maybe too cautious in the eyes of some people, but I have to respect Larry Scott and the patience in which he and his staff they're taking and trying to make this decision, make sure they do the right thing. I mean, let's keep it 100, guys. They're dealing with a whole lot of they got fires out there. I mean, the numbers were so high in California. So they're dealing with some issues that other parts of the country just aren't dealing with. So I understand why he's a little bit more cautious than maybe some of the other commissioners in other conferences, especially like the Big Ten.
Yeah, I kind of vacillate between understanding the cautious behavior and the cautious attitude towards it, and then feeling that maybe there's a lack of urgency at time to go ahead and really push to play. But you have to remember out here that they're fighting state and local legislation, as well as, as you said, the fires. I'm in California, and the air quality goes up and down, and I don't know how often we want to put these young men out in that environment and exposed to the COVID. So I will applaud Larry Scott, but I think the Pac-12 needs to get going, and they need to get going quickly. I don't think once they make this vote and they decide to return to play, because I believe they will, then they need to really ramp it up and try to get on the field as fast as they can. I don't think it takes 5 or 6 weeks to get these young guys ready to go play a football game. I think these guys stay in shape. They're doing work on their own. They're throwing on the field. I don't know if they're doing 7-on-7 and things like that, but I think they can be up and running in 3 to 4 weeks and be playing at a pretty high level. Remember, these are very skilled young men. They're great coaches. They know the game. They stay in shape, and they're eager to compete. So I hope that as we go forward here with the Pac-12, we sense a little bit more of an urgency to getting back on the field.
Coach, I'm really interested to get your perspective specifically on this. You know so much about the conference and the coaching life. So if they're the only Power 5 that doesn't get on the field for whatever reason, bigger circumstances, as Des alluded to, and it's important, but if they're the only ones that don't get on the field, what are the ramifications of that for you as a coach sitting in a living room trying to recruit guys to come play for this conference?
Well, I think it complicates things. I think that your competition will certainly use it against you. But I also think that as you appeal to a parent, you can always say, listen, we are always going to err on the side of caution and making sure that the health and welfare of your young son is first and foremost in our mind. And we do that as a school, and we do that as a conference. Now, the opponent's going to say, listen, you want to be a football player? You want to be a pro football player? Because every single player that's recruited thinks they're going to the NFL. They're going to say, hey, listen, come to our conference, play in our stadium. We didn't close it up during COVID. We found ways to mitigate the effects, to mitigate all the issues that could come into play,
Risks.
and we were able to play football. Yep. And the risks, yes, if you found the word for me there, thanks, Desmond, but mitigate the risk, and we continue to play. So come play for us, and we'll increase your chances of getting to the NFL.
Des, your thoughts?
No, I think that Coach hit it on the head. I mean, I was really curious to see what he would say about it, because, like you said, he's very familiar with that footprint. He understands the schools out there, the conference, the commissioner. He's dealt with them. So I was really curious to see what he said. I agree 100%. I think that they will try to use it negatively in recruiting, because you try to use anything that you have access to, and that's, hey, these guys, they didn't have you come out there. But if you're a respectable and a parent who really loves their child, you will look at what they're doing, in my opinion, and say, look, they had factors that other parts of the country didn't have to deal with, and they looked after the health and of their student athletes in a way that I respect. So if I'm just that type of parent. That's how I would look at it.
Well, and guys,
one of the issues here, one of the issues here is that Ohio State, Michigan, Oklahoma, Alabama, those teams are starting to come into California and take the top talent out of this state, or the West Coast and take it out of this state. So when you're talking about recruiting, you've got that threat, and now you've got the threat that they can use the fact that you didn't open up your conference to play early against you. But like Des said, most parents are saying, you know what? Yeah, I want my son to play football, and yeah, I'd love to have him have a chance to go play in the NFL, but I want him safe, and I want him healthy, and I want him taken care of by the people that I'm entrusting him with.
And that, gentlemen, is why I think transparency is such a conversation for every conference. Decide to play, decide not to play. Just do it transparently enough that the current players and the future players all know the process and the decisions that are being made. We're going to keep talking about that every single week, but coming up, all eyes are on Oklahoma State, on and off the field, for controversies this summer to what should be expected for them in the Big 12 this season. We'll break it down all coming up next.